On December 17, 1994, Carlos Buchan was being chased through Bold Street, Liverpool, England. As he ran along the street, he soon noticed that his surroundings had changed around him. The grey buildings remained in the same places, but the shop fronts looked different, and the people he saw were dressed in clothing from a different era. He was discovered 5 days later by the Watsons, the occupiers of the building, bricked inside a room that had been unused for decades. The Watsons claimed they heard strange sounds coming through the air vent, which they traced to a walled-up room at the back of their house. While investigating, they found Carlos strapped. Carlos was rushed to the hospital, where in a disoriented condition, he spoke of entering a time loop and being followed by a sinister tall man. This is the only account told which he gave to his reporter, Uncle Xander Buckton, a few days later, which details the horrific horror she went through on that fateful day, when for him time slipped. I hadn't been living in Liverpool long. I moved here with my family less than a year ago, and although I found a job and made some friends, my southern accent and awkward ways made me feel like I stood out, and not in a good way. Most of the people I hung out with were great except for this one guy, Mickey. He was arrogant and unpredictable, and treated his girlfriend Stacy like dirt, and I hated how it made her feel. But asked the new guy in the group, well, it was easier to stay quiet, but the none cold. December morning, I opened my front door to find Stacy sitting on my doorsteps, soaked through, shivering, and with a black eye. It took her inside. I let her use the shower. I gave her some of my clothes to wear. I didn't get a chance to ask her what had happened, but it didn't take a genius to figure out the swine who done this to her. The door shook open, and in stormed Mickey, a face twisted with pure hatred. His eyes flicked from Stacy's soaked coat hanging over the chair to the bedroom where she walked out in my clothes to well drying her hair. Stacy tried telling him it wasn't what it looked like, but you know what, put one and one together and made five. It was no good trying to reason with a guy like Mickey. I knew if I stayed there, I would be a dead man, but is a one opportunity to charge past them and then run out. Off there I kept on running and running and running. The adrenaline surged through my body and willed me on. I heard him shouting behind me, "You're dead, Carlos, you're dead." I ran toward the town center, thinking it would be better to go somewhere busy with Christmas just over a week away. The streets were bustling with people. I weaved around them, the best I could, muttering sorry as I bumped into people. I peered behind me and saw Mickey there gaining on me, so I rushed past Lime Street station and kept on going. My friend downs our cords to close to there. My plan was to cut through Bold Street and sneak into me friend's shop before Mickey could get to me. Was as I ran along Bold Street, something changed. The shops around me became less vibrant neon and color, and they had old-fashioned looking signs. Didn't make any sense. I peered behind me, but I couldn't see Mickey anymore. Instead, I saw people in velvet-colored jackets and trilby hats bustling along with their shopping, and then a box van whizzed around the corner, almost knocking me right off my feet. It looked like the sort of thing they drove in 50s movies and blazed on the side of. It was this name, Kaplan. It stirred around me in confusion, the blare from the box van's horn chewing in my head, and then the street sign was there, Bold Street, as clear as day. But the buildings and people looked out of place, as if they'd been transported from a different decade. I was so confused, but not knowing what else to do. I wandered along the street, trying my best to make sense of it all. Lee caught my breath. I was peering in a shop window, Rips looking at the court shoes and box-shaped handbags display. I pressed my hand to the window, not understanding it. The last time I'd been here, just last week, this shop was a bookstore. Now it felt like a step back in time as I stared at the store, unable to quite believe what was going on. As a reflection in the mirror, there was a tall man, almost 7 feet, standing there on the other side of the pavement. Despite his stature, Bill walked past him. Without as much as a second glance, he was wearing a brown tweed suit and, staring directly at me, I spun around and I swam there, his glare intense and unfaltering. He was cupping something in his hand. I couldn't quite make out what it was, but some sort of red substance was dripping down his fingers. Even from that distance, I could feel the dark energy emitting from him. There was nothing pure about this man. It turned and I walked on along the street, desperate to make some distance between me and that tall man. When I next peered back, the tall man had gone. I felt relieved about this, but I still had that uneasy feeling in my gut. I also had no idea what was going on. I saw a woman in a fur coat buying a newspaper from a newsstand. I went over to her and I asked her what the date and year were, and she looked at me like I was crazy but held the paper and pointed at the date. My stomach lurched in disbelief. December 17th, 1953. I let out nervous laughs. She tutted and hurried away from me. How could I slip backward 4 decades? This shouldn't be possible. I felt like someone was messing with me, like I'd ended up a victim to a Uri Geller mind trick. I pinched my arm, convinced I'd been some messed up dream. It felt that pinch as much as I felt the cold. I had a sweater on, but no jacket. I'd left in a hurry thinking about it. It was lucky I even had my sneakers on. I laughed at this fact, and I got another strange look from a mother with her daughter. I heard her ask her mother why my clothes looked so funny. The mother shushed her and steered her away when I turned my head. I gasped when I saw who was in front of me. It was that tall man. It was as if he'd appeared out of nowhere. He held his hand out toward me. I saw the blood running down his pale hand, but his fingers were still curled around the item, and I couldn't make out what it was. Didn't say a word. He just looked directly at me. Less blank stare. The darkness seemed to surround him, and being this close to him made it worse. That much coldness shouldn't ooze from a person. The dread rising inside of me, and I knew I had to get as far away from him as I could. As I ran away, I looked back to see the tall man standing in the exact same spot, his bloodied hand still outstretched. I didn't know how to end all of this and go back to my time. All I knew was that moment, I wanted to get away from that tall man. Ended up running past a street and reached a div filled with dumpsters. I desperately tried to scan for somewhere to go when I saw a peeling red door wedged open with a boot. I looked at it thinking it must lead to the back of a shop or someone's home. I didn't want to trespass given my youthful appearance. I thought if I got caught, I wouldn't be able to explain what I was doing. The Reese slowly moved back up the side street. He appeared. The tall man who stood there blocking my exit, his hand outstretched. Still couldn't tell what he was holding on to, but as always, fingers pulsing around. Detached if the object itself was beating, I pressed my hand to my beating heart, and then turned and stepped through the red door, deciding to take my chances in there over a run-in with him, before ideas appeared out of sight. I looked back at the tall man and saw that he was just standing there, unflinching this time. There was the slightest of smirks on his otherwise expressionless face. I stepped inside of what appeared to be a small back room. It was dark and dim, and the store walls seemed to glisten with dampness. Is a one other door into the main part of the building. But as I've reached out to turn the handle, something happened, something I can't explain. The light vanished, drowning me. In darkness, it was stifling, and I struggled to breathe. I frantically felt around the room, feeling 4 stone walls with little width between them, but no sign of a door. I screamed out for help, but my cries were muffled. If the don't the wall to no avail, and then N is lumped to the good defeated. There was now AO. I thought I was going to die. They're trapped where noon would ever find me. Time passed. I don't know if it was hours or days. It all seemed irrelevant. I felt something dripping down on my head, a constant drip, 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 drip. I was in a nightmare, a monotonous, dark, dripping nightmare. Then I kicked something over. I fumbled to pick it up and found what felt like a plastic bottle. As I turned at the liquid within it gushed, I unscrewed the lid and sniffed at it. It was smell as my lips were chapped and my mouth ached from thirst. It couldn't have been anything but with nothing left to lose. It tried. A small sip was water. The briefest of moments, my eyes widened with delight. But then reality hit. The water would only prolong the agony of dying in a place like this. Every sufton, I would find a bout of energy from within myself. I doozy to scream, to thud, to scratch on the walls. My hands were bruised and bloody and my fingernails scraped off in the end. Couldn't even think about my family or friends anymore. All I could picture was the tall man. He was vivid in my mind, only this time his outstretched hand. I could see clearly what he was holding, a beating, pulsating heart. I immediately placed my hand on my chest to feel something, anything. But I heard no beating. All I could hear was the sounds of my own panic thoughts, and then I heard something, voices coming from above me. I thought that I was imagining them, that I'd lost my mind completely. Shouted one last time before I knew that was it. I had no shout left to give. I was out of water and out of time. I had no choice but to let the darkness claim me. I remember the crashing sound and dust and rubble fall around me. I heard an Oasis song coming from somewhere. And then I remember the burst of lights, so strong it burned my eyes. And then I saw a man in safety goggles and a painted shirt, a hammer in his hand and a bewildered look on his face. I don't remember much more. After that, I woke up in a hospital with my family around me. So skittish, I honestly thought I would slip away into the past again, that the tall man would be there taunting me now days later. I still feel uncomfortable, but it's over. I have to keep telling myself it's over. And I'm slipped back 4 decades that I am sure of. Only back in the present, the room no longer had doors. I was bricked in. And I'm not afraid of Mickey anymore. It's impossible to be afraid of someone as feeble as him when you've stared true evil in the eyes and you live to tell the tale. I hope I never go back to a time where the tall man will be waiting for me. I don't know for sure what he wanted from me. I don't like thinking about it, but all I know is I can't ever go back there to a time with him. The tall man. Many times slips have been reported in Bold Street, Liverpool, but none as sinister as Carlos's account. The doorways to that building has stepped into or bricked up in the 1960s. After a series of break-ins, there is no plausible reason Carlos found himself trapped within the and was discovered on December 22, 1994, on hearing strange sounds echoing through the old air vent. The Watsons traced the sounds to the bricked-up room, and suspecting rats hammered their way into set traps they never expected to find. Cart there dehydrated and a matter of hours away from death. Although the tales of time slips on Bold Street continue to be experienced, other accounts of the tall man are rare. It is unknown who this man is, what he wanted with Carlos, and if he had any involvement in the time slips. But to back up Carlos's story, further, a woman named Ethel Price heard his account and came forward to say that when she was a little girl, she remembers seeing a man identical to him, wearing funny clothes, running down Bold Street. Carlos was lucky to survive, but what happened to him haunted him for the rest of his life. He moved away in the following months and has made no public statement since. The mystery regarding the peculiar time slips of Bold Street will continue to baffle those who both hear and experience such occur. For more scary horror stories, please subscribe. Specter Story.